Charlotte had dreamed of opening a flower shop. She and her husband Gerald had saved and invested their money quite well. After praying and seeking God, Gerald and Charlotte found a space not too far from where they lived. Next, they scheduled the grand opening 2 months later. Gerald walked around admiring the flowers. This flower shop is going to do great. I'm amazed at the variety of flowers you have. Thanks, but we have to have customers to buy flowers. I invited everyone at church and put an ad in the local paper. I also put flyers in our neighbors' mailboxes at the community center. I pray we have a good turnout for our grand opening tomorrow. The next day, Charlotte and Gerald arrived early to attend to every detail. Charlotte was in the back of the store preparing more flowers to sell. Gerald went to the back of the store and said, "I think you need to come up front for a moment." Charlotte could not believe her eyes as the tears welled up. There were over 100 people lined up outside waiting for the opening of the store. Gerald said, "Let's just go ahead and open up the doors for these people. They want flowers." Charlotte nodded. Their grand opening was a success, and the flower shop continued to do great business. Question: why is it important to seek God's direction before implementing a plan? When Solomon finished making these prayers and petitions to the Lord, he stood up in front of the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling with his hands raised toward heaven. He stood and in a loud voice blessed the entire congregation of Israel. "Praise the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. Not one word has failed all of the wonderful promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he is with our ancestors. May he never leave us or abandon us. May he give us the desire to do his will in everything and obey all his commands, decrees, and regulations that he gave our ancestors. And may these words that I have prayed in the presence of the Lord be before him constantly, day and night, so that the Lord our God may give justice to me and to his people Israel, according to each day's need. The people all over the earth will know that the Lord alone is God and there is no other. And may you be completely faithful to the Lord our God. May you always obey his decrees, commands, just as you are doing today." Renewed commitment. The third prayer King Solomon offered during the dedication of the temple is in verses 54 through 61. After the conclusion of the second prayer in verses 22 through 53, he stands up and faces the people. He has humbled himself in the sacred space that will be used to worship and honor God. He understands the historical and spiritual importance of the dedication of the temple for the Israelites at the moment and in the future. Now he has to address the people of Israel who have assembled for the historic occasion. The priests were the ones who blessed the people. However, Solomon's blessing here is actually a prayer of blessing and praise to God. King Solomon praises God for the rest from Israel's enemies and his faithfulness. His father David was a great warrior who defeated many of the nations who were enemies of Israel. These nations had not been eradicated when Israel took possession of the promised land in Canaan. The nation is now at rest from the threat of attacks because David defeated these enemies. However, this made David a warrior who had shed blood, which disqualified him from building the temple. God was gracious and promised David that his son would be the one to do it. Solomon and his generation of Israelites need God's presence just as much as their ancestors did. God promised to not fail thee nor forsake thee. But King Solomon knew there was a commitment needed on their part to incline our hearts to him, to keep the covenant. The Israelites, like us, had a tendency to stray away from God. If we love God, we should obey his laws and commands, not our own desires. We have to yield our hearts, minds, and souls totally to him. Question: how does God's presence make a difference in our lives? Requesting God's help. King Solomon was appointed by God to serve. However, he recognized his and the people's necessity of requesting God's help meeting daily needs. We too have to seek God to provide our daily needs so we will not yield to the temptations of the world. God will provide for his people. We can depend on him. As the people obeyed God and the daily needs were provided, King Solomon hoped that God's glory would be known in the world. People are always watching those who call themselves Christians. They want to see if we're living the lives we confess to believe in. What will people conclude by watching you? The world needs God to be a light in your life so that they can know he is real. Question: how does God provide help in meeting our daily needs?